Thank you. I'm going to talk a bit about why this is the wrong way to bring about gender neutrality. I'm going to talk about the purpose of education, I'm going to talk about the importance of diversity in the education system, and I'm going to talk about the backlash. Johan's going to talk a bit about how even, because I'm going to sort of argue as if we assume that we want gender neutrality. My partner's going to talk about a bit about how we're not really convinced that gender neutrality as well as gender equality is really what we want in society. Before I do this, I'm going to move into a bit of the rebuttal. So, most of my rebuttal will be into Rome, which sort of clash a bit a lot directly. But first of all, they assume that education sort of is the way to fix all these things. We think that sort of the parent, for example, is considered a major influence on children at this age. And they're probably not going to like this. And this is what I'm going to get into a bit in the background. So we're not going into this actually works in that sense. So they can just change the education system and by the way change the attitude of these kids. Secondly, we think that the way they're defining emotion is a bit unclear to us. So we agree that the government shouldn't give children propaganda posters saying that women should be in the kitchen. But we don't think that is what the debate's about. We think that the government already doesn't really do these things. I mean, this is sort of more about a more aggressive stance, right? Where you, for example, might remove gender pronouns, where we really want to break down sort of classic male and female activities in kindergarten and so on. So we think that sort of that's what we're going to try and debate here. But that's what we think is very controversial. So, first of all, purpose of education. Now, we think that what the government wants to do is we want to use education as a tool to mold people into desirable citizens. And we think that this is not what the primary purpose of education is. We think that sort of sure one imparts a critical thinking so people can take part in democracy and so on. But we think that beyond that, generally we want to train people. We want to provide them with the skills they need to be part of society. Democratic sort of values attributes is a sort of part of that. But we also think that sort of in general we want people to be able to handle society with a sense of need. And we think society at large isn't gender neutral, right? It's sort of moving toward gender equality, but it's not even all the way there yet. And so we think that pretending to children that this is the way the world works is something that is unfair to them. It doesn't sort of prepare them for the real world, it leaves them exposed to the gender inequality that they're going to meet when they go out into real life. It's sort of like for us Swedes, when we go abroad and we have no idea what's going on with men and women. And that's what you'll see later tonight, you have no idea how to interact with Secondly, we think that the diversity of the education system is important. So we think that first of all, children have a sort of a right, young people here have a right to sort of go for the environment they want to be in, that they feel that they fit into. And we think that they shouldn't be forced by the state to fit into some sort of specific context that the state has designed for them. We think that in general you learn better when you're in an environment where you feel safe and accepted, where you feel that sort of your ideas and your way of life is something that is appreciated. We also think that parents have a right to sort of impart their values to their children and put their children into the context that they think are the best. Sure. And thus we think that in general this is sort of not a right that the state has to force people into this sort of gender neutral context. But we also think that we have plenty of schools, say Christian schools, Christian universities, just to use one example, of schools that wouldn't probably agree with this, that wouldn't want to be gender neutral. And we think that they have a right to exist. We think that in general, education is something we want to foster critical thinking, debate, different viewpoints. We think that for the state to go in and try to make it monolithic, try to make everyone fit into one mold and sort of disallow other opinions is not something that is good. We do want to keep the education system something that is diverse, but is open for many different viewpoints.
Yeah, children interact with society before even kindergarten. The problem is that their parents might advocate a narrative that might be really racist or sexist or whatever. Why is it bad to challenge that authority interpretation?
Okay. So, first of all, we're not going to accept that, not being for gender neutrality necessarily is totally a bad thing. But aside from that point, we think that we don't want the state in general to have the attitude that this is how we currently think society should run, and this is the only thing we're going to allow to be taught in schools, and we're going to sort of brainwash kids from a really low age to believe in the values we currently set up. We think that the state should generally be careful in imposing values on people. And we think this is especially important when you look at an issue like gender issues. These are things that have evolved over time, right? Like the views on how men and women should act have changed. We think that it's probably a good thing in the past that we didn't, brainwash people into thinking that women were worth less, for example. And we think it's also a bit different if you talk about something like racism. Of course, it's kind of obviously bad if, in this debate, we wouldn't say that the attitude that, women are really stupid and we should beat them at home or something should be something you should be allowed to teach in kindergarten. or we think that the issue of whether like men and women are perfectly equal and gender pronouns are really sort of a violation of women's rights is like another issue. It's not as obviously true, and it's not something that's more up to the date and should be up to the date.
So,
and we think that generally want to have more sort of a humble attitude on these things. And we think that it is especially important to have when it comes out of this that a lot of people care quite deeply about. Because the third point that I want to get to is the potential backlash. We think that if there's one thing that people really care about, it's their own children, right? And it's something that we really sort of get passionate about is how they raise their children, and how they often want to raise their children in ways that sort of remind them of their own child. People want their children, for example, to play with the toys they play with as kids. And we think that when you step in and you sort of say that we're going to sort of brainwash you, we're going to forbid your daughter to play with dolls, we're going to forbid your son to play football because that would be gender neutral, we think you strike at the heart of what a lot of parents sort of think are really their decisions and things that are really important to them. And we think that it feeds a very unfortunate narrative of sort of out-of-touch feminists, no connection to the real world, stepping in and telling you how to run your life. So that's fundamentally harmful to the important sort of goals of feminism and like more important and more pressing issues. Like we look at sort of battle over, to protect women's sexual integrity, for example, to deal with workplace conditions, discrimination against women at the workplace and university. I mean, there are a lot of sort of very, very important issues that feminists are fighting right now. And by doing this extremely radical move that turns people off to the feminist movement, you harm the progress in all of these cases. It's sort of like when you try to move too far ahead of our society currently, I think we think that you risk losing a lot of the progress you make. An example of this is Turkey, who moved like extremely strong in the secular direction when they still had a very, very sort of developed population. We've seen in Turkey that there's been this sort of backlash reaction, where now sort of the Muslim movement, the Islamist movement, has gained a lot of strength and it's becoming the dominant political force. Very much a reaction to the fact that they, for example, banned Vegas in public, which is something that people then do not like. So we think that it's much better to fight the battles that you can actually gain a lot of popular support for, and whether if you want to sort of if we're going to get to this sort of very radical place, that will have to happen later. So, what have I told you? I told you that the purpose of the education system is not to create like desirable citizens, it's to prepare them for society, and this is how society is. I want to pursue a diverse education system, and we should be moving this radical step because that's going to create a major backlash. For all these reasons, we're very proud.